right back. But uh, welcome to Watts Island. Dun, dun, dun. What do you guys
Okay.
think of that image there?
My Watts Island boat, I lost an oar. I'm back. Hello,
Yeah,
everyone. Okay, let me check the chat.
I like this image. It's pretty good. This one's also pretty good.
Chat with everyone in the studio. How come I can't see our chat? Okay, there we go. Hey, Carrie. Hey, Cuffview. Mirabelle. All right.
So,
I'm trying to stream from mine and check yours too. So, how is
so today we're going to be
everyone's
talking about something you guys might have already talked about before or watched other videos on. Um, and I swear I had a. Here's my script. Sorry, guys. I can't memorize these things, but welcome to Timeless Mysteries Live Edition. I'm thrilled to have you all tuning in today, and I'm especially excited to welcome our guest, Jennifer from Crafted Evidence Podcast, where we've got a compelling lineup of topics today. Some that you're probably familiar with, but you haven't heard them like we're going to talk about them. Today, we're going to get into Tallman and Watts, and we're going to talk about the book. We're also going to talk about prisoner extortion and murderabilia. And we're going to look at the realities of life in prison. These are heavy and complex topics. Our goal is to tackle them with respect and curiosity. Um, so I guess let me see, where are we? I guess I'll let Jennifer read through this first slide.
Oh, hold on. I have our chat up. All right, let me get it up here. Sorry, guys, I have a little delay here. To start out, does everyone know who Dylan Tallman is? Just curious in the chat. All right, Rob, give me 1 second. Probably should have just pulled it up to the Google Docs, but here we are. Okay, guys. So pretty much everyone knows who he is. However, we'll cover it. Hey, Olga. In 2020, Dylan Tallman publicly claimed to be the only friend that Chris Watts had at Dodge Correctional Institution, hinting that he offered Watts spiritual counsel and emotional support. In a previous interview, Dylan called Chris his spiritual brother. Soon after, he published a slim, hastily compiled ebook on Amazon, and he co-authored this with Watts. And it contained details of Watts's personal reflections. Now, how he got Chris to do this is a lot of you also know that Chris has turned to the Bible. Dylan Tallman, like a lot of prisoners, is very connected religiously, and the two of them began talking first about religion and then opened up about their personal lives. According to the people who saw the listing, the book was very short, almost like a pamphlet. I've reviewed it through audio. There are other channels that have reviewed it. And it offers like a vague, kind of repetitive, a lot of things we've already heard Chris say. And it's a genuine insight on Chris's psyche. Many of you reached out last night asking, did you guys see the News Nation interview? And, Rob and I were talking, and I've talked with some of you guys, and we were like, wait a minute, these letters are not new. They're the letters that Dylan Tallman had and wrote in this book. And it may be new information. We all cover old cases sometimes, but it was a little disappointing that we thought there was going to be some new letters, but we'll kind of get to those letters in a little bit. But the readers who have managed to purchase this book, now remember, it's been pulled, and there was some type of conflict with Chris and Dylan, and he had written consent from Chris and also Chris's parents to publish anything they talked about. They made an agreement. They're going to publish a book. Dylan said, I have experience doing this and we're going to do it. So they did it. And Dylan was smart about this. He released the book in 3 series. They're short, but you have to buy 3 books. So, business mindset. So, before it disappeared, Tallman framed himself as a protector and a spiritual guider to Chris, painting a portrait of a religious and remorseful Chris who was slowly finding redemption behind bars.
So, was it Chris that pulled the book? That's what I'd like to know. Um, I tried to. At first I didn't want to read this book because I read the letters from Chris before this came out, and I was really like disappointed with that one too, and it got pulled also. Um, but this book was also pulled after I think 3. There was 3, right, or is there 4?
Yeah, there's 3.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah,
you can't
after the
really. I
3rd.
don't know why he calls them books either. They're very short. They're very huge font, and the margins are huge also. It's more like a mini novella. It's not even a full novella, I think. But let me see. I can't read this. So I made this slideshow to kind of go along with everything today. Um, so let me move my camera a little bit. Sorry, guys.
Mirabelle
Um,
says, if you signed a release, can Chris Watts pull it off? There must have been a loophole, right, Rob? Like,
there's got to be something. I mean, I don't
yeah.
know. Maybe, but this is important. I wrote it down here. This is what I think may have happened. Amazon has policies against content that exploits crime or victimizes individuals for profit. And it's possible the company or its moderators flagged the Tallman's publication for violating those guidelines. Another theory is that Tallman or someone acting on his behalf chose to remove the book in response to legal threats or institutional pressure. Whether it was the reader's complaints, Amazon's own terms of service enforcement, or a directive from prison officials who deemed it a breach of rules on inmate communication, the short volume vanished, leaving behind little more than screenshots, rumors, and a few there's a few web YouTubers out there who read most of the book on their channels, and it's kind of hard to find those things. They're usually like, 2 or 3 hour live stream, and then somewhere in the middle they read the book. So they are
Right.
out there. But
it is, yeah, copyright infringement to sit there and read the full book.
But I don't know that it is. Yeah. I mean, if you buy it, you should be able to read it.
Well, a part of the YouTube, and I know TikTok for sure, you have to discuss the book while you're doing the review. So like when I did my Sherilyn Cadle book, you have to make sure to add your own commentary to it instead of, just a word for word regurgitating, the text of the book.
How do the kids' book readers get to read those entire books?
I think people just don't flag them. Like,
maybe.
Yeah. Interesting comment in the comment section. Someone said, can inmates sign contracts? And I have to think they can, because Chris signed the deed, the sale of the home over to the Rusick family. So I have to think they're allowed to sign legal documentation and make deals. Chris just can't profit off of that book.
Yeah, there are some laws. I wrote this really huge thing that I'm probably going to make it into a long form video soon, talking about some of the rules for things like that. But it's so huge, I can't find anything specific to share at the moment. Unfortunately, sorry guys. Um, but so my other question is, are they really friends at all?
Yeah.
I did mention at the beginning of this that I was going to talk about, extortion of prisoners. There is that aspect in prison. Um, somebody could threaten you unless you give them parts of your pieces of your clothing, pieces of your letters, stuff you've written to somebody else, and then they try to sell it, especially if you're, um, some high profile killer like Chris Watts is. Um, but I don't know if they were actually friends. I mean, I know there's a few things that kind of suggest that they are, but we don't know what was happening all the time. They both seem to be very religious, but we don't know what it's like whenever people aren't watching either. Um,
From what I
Tallman,
gathered in Dylan's interviews, as he didn't know who Chris was at first. So Dylan was there first, and he literally was the cellmate next door. I don't know if you have a picture of his book, but that is the title. Um, and he immediately went over to the outlet and started chatting with Chris. And Chris right away gave him his real name. But at that moment, Dylan actually didn't really know like that much about what happened. And apparently, I think Rob and I are going to kind of get into this later, but in prison, there's a code where you don't talk about a person's crime. You would say stuff, not what are your charges. So there's kind of this code to follow being a prisoner as well.
yeah, but yeah, Tallman presented them as kindred spirits bonding over faith, but others wonder if that so-called friendship was more transactional. Um, Chris Watts didn't have any friends in prison. He probably received a lot of threats. And I don't know if you guys noticed this slide, but this is a sort of a, um, whoops, sorry guys. You see how he's holding on to the inside out of that guy's pocket. If you ever watch Prison Break, this is a thing that they do in prison. So if you're protected by the big guy, you got to like walk around like this apparently. But I get it; it's movies. But I just kind of make that image to be funny.
Yeah.
But um, multiple sources have confirmed that Chris Watts is especially isolated. Many prisoners despise him for the murder of his daughters. Staff keep him in or near protective custody to deter violent attacks. Under these conditions, any inmate who shows him kindness can quickly gain his trust, particularly if they promise to shield him from those threats and help him cope with his guilt.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kind of so you guys have an idea from a source I have who works at the prison. I'm not going to say what department. Um Chris is on a unit with 10 other individuals, and these individuals would be, for example, when a police officer is arrested, very dangerous to put a cop in with general population. He's also in there with people who may be mentally unstable, but not to the point where they should be in a mental institution, or people who have maybe cancer or a physical disability where they would be in a wheelchair, which would be dangerous for them to be in general population, because God knows they could take the wheelchair apart and make a weapon, right? I mean, they've got him pretty isolated.
So Olga Zonas says he posts too much info that Chris Watts is innocent. And, that's also, um, something I was considering. It seemed almost like some sort of strategy to, you know, stoke the fire that somebody else helped him and that, give him a chance at some kind of new trial. Um,
Um, Rob, can we play um one of those clips of Dylan so they can kind of hear what he sounds like?
yeah. Let me
I
see.
want to also give credit. I did not
From a
interview
third
Dylan.
party representative.
Sorry. It doesn't, it auto plays as soon as you click
Okay.
it.
I did not interview Dylan. Rob didn't interview him. This is an interview. I believe her name is Erica Erickson. I'm going to double check it, but we're going to play this clip for you. She did an interview with Dylan.
From a third party representative and from Amazon that the book had to be taken down. They actually did send me those emails. So I've seen those, and that's what he's talking about with the book being taken down. He's what Chris had told him that, which I hope you guys can hear him clearly, but in case you couldn't, that he had told him over and over, publish the book. And then he did, and then that happened. Which, let me ask you, Dylan, so you had, this is not, your books with him were not your first books ever, right?
No, I showed him. I had him order my book when I was at Dodge with him to show him like, hey, I've done this before. Let's do this. Do something productive with your time. There's nothing else you can do but turn it into good. And all we did was study the Bible all day. It's like we can write something, and we did. We wrote a series, and now I had to redact him from that series. That's why the 40-day devotional is now the 20-day.
And that's all we've got
Yeah.
on that one.
So he talked Chris into writing pretty much a religious book, but it makes you wonder what Dylan's intent really was. I mean, I'm not going to lie. If I was in that situation, I would dig around trying to find out why you did what you did. I know many of you in our chat would do the same if you had the opportunity, because we all want to make sense of it. And I'm just double checking because I always want to make sure we give credit to people who do these interviews. It is hard to work on these scripts. So yes, it's Alex Erickson, you guys. I'm so sorry. So Alex Erickson is the YouTuber who did the interview. But like I said, it's a lot of work. I mean, when Rob writes these pieces for you guys, it takes a lot of work and time and effort. So I always want to give credit where it's due. So I've reached out to Dylan since the release of this book and since it was pulled, and he has a girlfriend named Jamie, and I reached out to her. No one is talking, which makes me wonder, do you think, Rob, he also has like a gag order where he can't even talk about the book?
It does seem likely just based on how much he likes to talk about it, and then all of a sudden he stopped. So it's very likely.
Yeah.
I thought it was weird that book even got published, because he claimed to make a lot of statements directly from Chris Watts, but you can't verify that when Chris Watts' name is not on the book, and I think he's not allowed to have his name on a book, because if he puts his name on the book, then they are basically glorifying his crimes.
Yep. Son of Sam laws too.
Yep.
I feel maybe the Watts family got involved at some point and said, Chris, this is not good for you, because they really do want him to speak to an attorney again. They were really pushing him to file that 35C motion, which he didn't, and he only had 2 years to do that. I'm really shocked he didn't do it, but there is a call where he had with an attorney. I have that video listed in my playlist where he's getting advice from an attorney. Just how do I file this paperwork? You can just see how fresh is to this prison life. And I noticed Carrie B wrote a comment. Maybe Chris doesn't even really know the prison life. I mean, 6 years in now, he probably does, but you can tell Dylan's a little more seasoned and knows the ins and outs. Do you get that vibe as well?
Yeah, let me pull up this picture real quick. That's, I think, Dylan Tallman.
Is he wearing a hat?
He's got. It should be on the screen.
Oh, I'm looking at a different screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's Dylan. Yeah.
And I mean, there's other pictures too. I think he's got tattoos. He looks like a guy from prison, you know. I don't know what he was in for or anything.
That's what I meant to just search actually a second ago.
I don't think there's an easy answer. It's like hidden. You have to know like probably his date of birth.
I do believe he told Alex in the interview what his charges were, but I don't want to play her video. If you want to see it, definitely go to her page and check it out. But we will play a couple clips and mention.
Is that the one you sent me a second ago?
Yeah, we can play that. So that clip is about
so when
Dylan
I click it, it's gonna go. It's gonna start playing. So
okay,
just well, I clicked the wrong thing. So sorry, I just didn't want it to start playing and everybody like what. So here's this clip. And this browser is having trouble sharing your clip.
Oh, bummer. I have it though. I can play it worst case.
Let me try again.
Okay.
Okay, let me try another thing.
Okay. I'm painting too, by the way. If you notice my hands moving, you're like, what the heck is she doing? Gotta get some orders done. I'm just going through our chat too while you're looking for that. Olga said possession. Yes, you're right. He has a possession of some type of drug charge. I know that for sure. But I also wonder because Chris wasn't in general population, so Dylan had to do something pretty serious to be able to spend that much time with Chris. So that's one part that I'm confused.
He wasn't alone, and how people don't know this, like, it's weird how she just disappeared after that too, and she's not surfacing anywhere.
I know. I wanted to ask you about that. Well, should I show this? As we've received notice from a third party claiming the distribution of the following title. I do have that pulled up.
This just shows like my opinion of him never.
Oh gosh, I got cut off. But we all know who he's talking about. He's talking about Nicole.
Yeah, and I just put in the chat a little bit ago. What if Nicole was the one that sued him? Because it does, like, it's a book. It's not just like internet, gossip. It's an actual book, and it really does make her out to be a party to the crime. And that could be a legal thing for sure. I think.
I could also see maybe the Rusiks filing a complaint on Amazon as well.
Well, I think that was in maybe the second book where Chris mentioned that he fought her off. She had a knife or something. Yeah. But there was no defensive wounds on her. Like she didn't fight back, and there would have been something to show some kind of struggle for that to be believable, in my opinion.
Yeah. Marco says, chiming in on some Watts, Nicole Kessinger sighting. Yeah, the funeral video. We didn't do a video on it, but we chatted about it the other day.
Yeah, I still feel kind of weird that she was at a funeral. It's like funerals are supposed to be mostly private, private, and then like that's how she got seen. I don't know. She's got to go outside some point. Somebody's going to video her.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
If it was
she's not in hiding. She lives
in funeral. I would probably play it and be like everyone else and be like, "Oh my God, look at her!" But it's not. It's a funeral, and I feel feels a little bit disrespectful to whoever was having service.
Yeah.
You know.
And I also just don't want to like rehab. It's that, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to, you and I discuss this all the time. Like, Rob and I don't want to just like do Watts constantly just to make a video for video's sake. Like, we want to inform and educate and have a purpose for doing a video. And there's really no purpose except to be like, look at Nicole, she was seen. And we can do that right here, just talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So exploiting infamy. So I wrote down a few clues on why I think
I thought your audio cut out for a second there. I was like, I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought. Okay. Sorry. Sometimes that happens. But exploiting infamy by releasing a book about Chris Watts, even if it contained minimal or repetitive insights, Tallman positioned himself to profit from the unending curiosity that true crime enthusiasts have about this case. Many suspect Tallman pulled the book, the ebook's content from personal conversations or letters, potentially crossing the line between shared confidences. You know, there's there's also, it could have been an institutional crackdown. If Tallman published prison related material without proper clearance, the Wisconsin DOC might have intervened. High profile inmates often faced strict regulations on public communication, and any attempt to exploit those communications, trigger disciplinary measures. And I kind of already talked about this, the Amazon policy violations. Amazon explicitly bans certain contents, especially if it has to do with violence. And there could also be lack of substantive content. Some readers reported that the book didn't actually offer groundbreaking revelations, another sign that its main function might have been a cash grab rather than a sincere spiritual motivational guide. And I think that might have been about there's another book I think that's actually like some kind of prayer book that I haven't read, but I don't think that one's necessarily pulled. So what is the potential for extortion? There's no direct proof of extortion. The publishing debacle fits neatly into patterns seen in prison exploitation. An inmate cultivates high-profile target, coaxes personal information, then tries to monetize it. This could be anything. And if you see here, this is a stack of letters, that somebody's taking. They could have essentially, threatened him and said if he doesn't do this, then, something bad's going to happen. There is reason to suspect that, it was more than some sort of just ordinary friendship. The devotional book might have been a stepping stone toward a bigger commercial ventures. If Tallman could secure more intimate letters or confessions from the Watts's like stack of fan mail, then theoretically he could sell those also to tabloids. He could sell those to fans, and the word for it is murderabilia. I really I would never buy murderabilia at all. I don't know how people would want to save that kind of stuff.
And it's a thing. It really is. I mean, did you know there's also in Tennessee a crime museum?
Well, see, a crime museum is different. I would go to a crime museum, but I wouldn't have a collection of like, a murder wall or something.
But I'm wondering if that's why people are collecting it, to think that they could maybe sell it to the museum. I don't know.
Don't you donate to museums rather than sell to a museum?
Yeah, but I think if you have such a hot item that would, you know, bring in a lot of business for them, maybe um they people collect it to try to flip it kind of thing. Also, I'm wondering if that museum donates to victims of crimes, which they really should.
That
Um
is a good point. I don't know. We should
yeah, I'm going to
look
look it up right
it up.
now. Cuz that's what I want
I'm
to
curious too.
try to do on some of our lives here soon, you guys. Like if you follow my other stuff, like I do a lot of crafting and engraving. I would love to figure out, maybe we do a raffle and we raise money for some of these organizations that donate money to victims of crimes so that they can, you know, restart their lives in whichever way they need to, whether that be like mental therapy or moving away. I really don't know what it all entails, but I really would like to see organizations like that get some help from covering these cases.
So, are you guys familiar with this? Like, there's a story. I don't know if it's actually true or not, but supposedly, um, early on, they found Chris Watts's underwear in Tallman's cell, and they both got in big trouble for it. Um,
Yes. And
I don't.
lotion and
Yeah,
petroleum
petroleum
jelly.
jelly. Yeah,
And yeah, I believe Daily Mail did a whole article on it. And let's be honest, you guys, I'm sure that Chris just has a lot of money on his books. And Dylan, he was helping Dylan out. I mean, I don't think that there was anything going on between the two of them. I don't know what you think, Rob, but I think he was just being friendly, and Chris wants people to like him.
I
That's
think
just how
what
he
happens
is.
in prison stays in prison, right? I don't
I
know.
mean, it could
I don't
be.
know
I
that I
don't
care
know.
what they do with the sheets up, whatever they do. You know, most of the prison stuff I know of, it comes from the show Prison Break. So that's the only prison show I've ever really watched. Oh, I did
You
watch
need to
Off.
do an interview with that guy. That I don't know if you had a clip of it, but the guy we were talking about earlier today, who's kind of, he's on TikTok and he's been in prison, and he always kind of talks
Oh,
about,
what was his name?
oh
Yeah.
gosh, I can't remember the name at the top of my head, but I would be interested to talk to him and get some insight, because one thing they keep saying is the more we keep Chris in the news, the safer he is. But I don't see his name ever getting out of the news.
Trying to see if I could find it again. But watch history. Um, yeah, Viking mindset or something, right?
Yes.
I don't know who he is. I've never really watched his channel. I did watch a pretty interesting one that kind of gave me the idea for the prison dynamics that might be at play for this.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of went into some detail, but I don't think it's the same as, you know, looking up, doing the research rather than actually experiencing it. It's probably a lot different. And he might have more insight into what it's actually like there.
Yeah.
But
And I
I
bet
don't
each
know
prison's
who would
different
want
too.
to like buy used underwear, but he suggested that people were buying that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Is it okay if I read a bit about this museum we were just talking about?
sure.
Okay. So it is a .org. So they must use that funding to do something. I just don't really see where they use it, but maybe I'll find something here. Okay, so it's the crimemuseum.org. It opened in Washington, D.C., and in 2008. It's for educational resource on law enforcement and crime history and forensic science. They also operate the Natalie Holloway Resource Center. That's interesting because we were just talking to TJ last night.
Yeah.
They have a crime library. In 2016, you can view much of the collection. I guess they have 2 locations then. So this is the one I was talking about in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. I'm assuming if they run the Resource Center for Natalie Holloway, maybe if you go to the museum, maybe the funding goes towards one of those organizations, which would be awesome if that's what they do. But they have Ted Bundy's Volkswagen Beetle, Dahmer's glasses. We all kind of know those 80s famous glasses.
And since we're talking about other stuff, we're talking about other, the museum here. I'll share a little brief clip of a project that I'm working on that's not finished yet, but it's getting close. And it kind of goes along with Bundy's car. So that's why I just want to go ahead and share it real quick.
Settlement of $15,000, Kemper was out of work and restless. With that money, he bought a new car, a green 1969 Ford Galaxy, and he
So is that also there at this museum? Because I would like to see this car.
I'm going to send you the link. This is this is really interesting. I mean, I would go to this. I know it's kind of weird and morbid, but
well, I think going to a museum to look at this stuff is a lot different than, you got your murder room, or something. You walk down into a basement and then all of a sudden you got all your like crazy disturbing stuff.
And
like imagine
people have it.
Somebody like the Toy Box Killer, if you're collecting all of his stuff, that stuff is terrifying to look at. Like I would be afraid to be in the same room. And I think some of you guys who liked, watching ghost things wouldn't want to keep anything like that at home either. Because, spirits can kind of latch on to that stuff.
Attach.
I'm just kidding, guys.
Are you playing more of that?
Yeah, I can play just another
play a little more.
Lee outfitted it for murder. He lined the trunk with plastic bags, obtained knives, a gun, and those handcuffs his police buddy had given him. He even kept tools like blankets and ropes, the kinds of things a person might need to secure a victim. At night, he would sit in that car, the interior smelling of Armor All and steel, fantasizing about the women he saw on the streets. Santa Cruz was full of young college girls and hippies hitchhiking from place to place. Thumbing rides was a normal part of life back then. To Ed, each outstretched thumb was an invitation. At first, he resisted his murderous impulses. He picked up hitchhikers, dozens by his own count, and let them go unharmed, savoring the sense of power in choosing not to kill. But with each ride, the line between fantasy and reality wore thinner. By the spring of 1972, Ed's urges had sharpened into a singular obsession.
So that's all. I'm coming out hopefully next weekend. You guys can check out the whole thing. It's actually much longer story than I had been telling, so that's why it's taken a lot longer to finish it. The more of the story there is, the longer it takes to record it, the longer it takes to like fix all the mistakes and everything.
Yeah, like I said, content creators put a lot of effort into their work. So anytime we use people's material, I want to give a shout out. And Rob works really hard at his scripts. So
you guys have caught me, right? You can hear my regular voice coming out every now and then. This is technically my regular voice. I just kind of listen in and kind of lean into the little deeper parts of it. But yeah.
Don't we all have a reading voice though?
Higher, a little bit whispery, but it's still my voice.
Yeah, it's still you. It's not AI. Laura said $250K for the Dahmer glasses. I saw that.
Who would do that?
Right?
Nobody.
Like, could you imagine? Okay,
maybe
like
another serial killer, right?
Wearing those glasses, Rob, and you being like, "Those are some really sweet glasses." And if I were like, "Yeah, they're Dahmer's," would you be impressed? No.
I would be like, "Is that a new like, a brand?"
Right.
New Ray-Bans, but they're called Dahmer's now.
When I was watching your video, it made me think hitchhiking's really died down these days, huh?
You know, they actually had laws that came into place about hitchhiking because of this guy.
Good.
Back in the 70s, everybody was hitchhiking. You
Yeah.
know, you got to think about it also. There were females finally, you know, allowed to go to college. So they were away from home on their own. They had no idea what was happening. I mean, it's been what, 40, 50 years since all this kind of stuff has happened. So people have learned not to do that.
Yeah. I wanted to read something that I just had some notes on, Rob, that I didn't mention to you, but Tallman is not the first inmate to say that he had a friendship with Watts. There was a gentleman who his last name was Carter. I'm trying to think of his first name. It is not on the top of my head, but he claims that he was friends with Chris and that Chris was across the hall from this guy and he did like an interview with Daily Mail. I feel like a prisoner immediately always goes to Daily Mail and dishes. But he said that he would listen and hear death threats because, you know, people would be screaming at Watts all the time to unalive himself. But here's like one of the quotes that this guy, Carter, gave that I just can't imagine Chris saying this, but he claims that Chris said he did what he did because he didn't want to pay child support. I just can't imagine Chris being that blunt about it. I don't know what you think.
I think it's a lie. I think, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
just going through all of the stuff that I've went through, it makes more sense, especially after watching that video on that channel with the person we were just talking about. I can't remember the channel name again, but he mentioned, you know, the gangs in the shadow economy and stuff like that in prison. You know, it makes a lot more sense that this stuff is happening because they're exploiting him. You know, making threats, and if he doesn't follow through, then, you know, I would like to think that, you know, Tallman was really into, you know, trying to better himself and, you know, get spiritually, you know, right and try to be good and do all these things, but you never know. They're in prison. Um, but let me just read stuff that I got here on this, if I can find it again.
While you're looking for that, someone mentioned kind of asking, does everyone think that they should take the Watts house down? I always thought like the community would want to come together and build like a park or like a green space. But that
Well,
house,
that would mean somebody would have to donate the house,
yeah, and it just
and
sold again
that's a lot of money.
It sold again in October of last year. Don't know anything about the people. I haven't researched them. I haven't looked them up. I kind of want to respect their space and privacy, but it did sell for under asking price. But the previous homeowners, the Millers, were putting their business out there for everyone to see. Since that happened, they are now divorced. So,
yeah, some people claim it's the house that brought all that out of those people because they were supposedly good people before they went in there, but I don't believe any of that. But let's see. So prison gangs and the shadow economy. Inside Dodge and other U.S. prisons, criminal organizations, prison gangs wield enormous influence. These gangs operate as underground networks, even under tight supervision. They have rigid hierarchies, codes, and a clandestine communication method that allows them to run illicit enterprises from behind bars. Common activities include drug trafficking, strong arm extortion of weaker inmates, gambling rings, and even contract violence. Notably, prison gangs often target valuable, vulnerable without allies or without notoriety to intimidate and extort them. There was a book from back in the 80s where they identified intimidation of non-gang prisoners and extortion as a pervasive problem inside prisons. Um, in simple terms, gangs take advantage of the law of the jungle behind bars. And a high profile inmate like Watts, who's widely hated, he goes into prison and he is the lowest of the low. He killed children. There's like all these really bad guys here, right? And
Yeah.
they've all done like horrible things. And still, Chris is at the bottom of those. So all those bad guys want a piece of Chris Watts. Um, he is widely hated. He's and when he's isolated and would ordinarily be an ideal target for such strong arm tactics, if not for the extraordinary protections around him. Despite strict rules and staff vigilance, gangs find ways to circumvent supervision. They pass messages via coded letters, legal mail, or third parties to coordinate their activities. For example, California's notorious, I'm going to butcher this, the Nustra, let me type it in the chat. Maybe one of you guys know what I'm talking about. The Nustra Familia gang. I don't know how to pronounce that. They managed to orchestrate drug deals and extortion rackets from within a secure housing unit by hiding notes inside legal envelopes and using paroled members to relay orders. Prison gangs act as a secret society right under the noses of the guards. They enforce discipline through fear and can mobilize members across different units or even different prisons. The economy behind bars, trading in contraband, favors, and influence, is largely controlled by these groups. They levy taxes on those who trade drugs or contraband in their territory and extort anyone who can be exploited for money or goods. As one corrections expert explained, gangs operate illegal enterprises such as drug trafficking and extortion for gain and collect taxes within the prison's illicit markets. The presence of well-organized gangs means extortion can become systematic. And prisons with strong gang influence isn't a random occurrence; it's institutionalized. Gangs might demand regular payments, commissary goods, phone account credits, or having the inmate's family send money in exchange for protection or mere permission to be left alone. Failure to pay can result in beatings or worse. The Aryan Brotherhood, for instance, is a white supremacist gang that has honed prison racketeering to a deadly art. Despite compromising less than 1% of inmates, the AB is responsible for a large share of prison murders and engages heavily in extortion and inmate prostitution as revenue streams. I mean, this is stuff. I mean, this goes on and on, but this is stuff that you don't think about. I mean, we see it in movies and stuff, but this is really, they pull that information from real places, and it's real. It's a real thing. And Chris Watts coming into prison, he's never been in prison before. He's going to be the prime target. Plus, on top of that, he's got national news, so that means he's high value. And anybody who can get close to him wins, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, their goal is to get to him. I think something also people don't really realize is that prison has a really big job to keep him safe, and they want to keep him safe because technically he is now government property because he's a prisoner. And let's say Chris does get attacked and he's killed, the family could sue the state of Colorado for wrongful death. And no one wants that. No one wants anyone to kind of gain any more from this whole tragedy in itself. So like they are really working hard to keep him safe.
Yeah, I don't know how long that's going to last. I mean, eventually they have to, something's going to happen eventually. I
Yeah.
know that a couple of weeks ago somebody thought that he had gotten attacked. It wasn't him, but it could happen. It could
Yeah.
have already happened. We just don't know about it.
Wheels of Life asked if he gets conjugal visits. No, he does not.
How do you know that?
From the person I know who works there.
Is he doesn't get them because he's not allowed, or he doesn't get them because he doesn't want?
No, I don't believe Wisconsin allows it. I know that. Oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. There was something I was just thinking about. Oh, so you know why we haven't had any new phone calls? Because I put in a request and it has been over 2 months, and I requested phone calls, his prison phone calls. Apparently Wisconsin doesn't release them like some of the other states do, like the local Weld County jail he was in. Or for example, I do a lot of the phone calls with Wade Wilson, who's in Florida. So the calls, they are recorded, but for some reason they don't technically have to release them, which I thought is legal because it should be public record. But that's why it's been taking so long. I'm like, why aren't they releasing this to me? I'm like, legally I have the right to see it, but apparently there's some type of rule at that jail where they claim to not record the calls.
Maybe they just have live listeners screening the calls.
They're definitely screening those calls, because you got to know, like if they're talking about drug trafficking and stuff, you could pick up tips that way. But that's why we haven't
talking
heard
code, so they might not pick it up.
That's true. Yeah.
I can't even imagine
stamps.
That.
Like you got to get me some stamps. Maybe is code for something else.
That's too easy of a code, I think.
Yeah. See, I'm lame. I've never been to prison. I'm not cool. I don't know the.
I don't know. You'd have to think about it for a while and then like cross off all the easy stuff to guess and then go with that.
Yeah. Chris had an IQ, very immature. I agree. I feel like he was very inexperienced with women and dating and all of that. I guess they record calls, but doesn't mean yeah, technically they don't. I always kind of thought they had to release them because if some of you are new to the channel, I'm a former journalist out of Atlanta, and I never had an issue putting in a records request for the phone calls. Sometimes they would make you come get them in person on a CD, which was a pain in the butt. But they were trying to make it as difficult as possible. But I've never had an issue requesting calls until I started launching the YouTube channel and wanted to get recent phone calls with this case. So all the calls we have are from when he was in Colorado.
So guys, one of my trivia questions is about to go live here in a few minutes, and I just thought maybe we could talk about this on a live for once. This is the type of how do you survive, what's the best way to survive kind of trivia questions. They don't do that well as far as all my trivia stuff goes, but I think they're the most fun to think about. Yesterday we were talking about, well, what happens when your friend disappears? Do you report it right away? That girl disappeared, nobody did anything. But so today, here in about 3 minutes, this is going to be live on my channel on the community tab. So you and your best friend are enjoying a night at a packed downtown club. The music thumps as people dance under the strobe lights. After an hour, your friend shouts that she's heading to the restroom. You nod and watch her weave through the crowd. It's late, but the night feels young and safe until she doesn't come back. 15 minutes have passed. You scan the dance floor, expecting to spot her familiar outfit. Nothing. Her drink is still on your table. Her phone is buzzing with your text. She left it behind. A ripple of worry cuts through. She would never leave without her phone or tell you. Where I lost my place. This is really small print. Here, let me just switch screens. There we go. So, yeah, she would never leave without her phone and not tell you. Heart pounding, you push through the swaying bodies towards the restrooms, calling her name. The stall doors are empty. A stranger mentions seeing a girl who matches her description stumbling toward the side exit with an unknown man. Your stomach drops. Something is very wrong. Your mind races with possibilities. Could she have left willingly with somebody? Maybe, but her phone and purse are here. She wouldn't have vanished without them. A cold urgency grips you. You remember recent news about drink spikings and abductions in nightlife spots. Fear sharpens your senses as adrenaline kicks in. Every second counts now. You know you must act immediately before she's lost without a trace. How do you save her life? What do you guys think?
Maybe. I mean, you couldn't do this back when we went to the bar, but GPS tracking on the phone's probably a really good idea nowadays, right? Like when you go out with your friends.
Yeah, but she left her phone behind with her drink.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, but I just thought of that, and I'm like, that's a really good idea.
Well, if you guys want to click over to the community page, you can vote right now if you want for your best answer. And I'm afraid to scroll down because you'll see the answer here. So I'm going to unshare the screen.
Yeah, chat, let us know. Oh, I have to give a shout out, Rob. Guess who's in our chat on my live on my side? Our buddy Zawoki. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys from coming from his page. I engraved this for you, by the way, Zawoki. I need to mail it. Well, you know what? I'll bring it in person when I come in 2 weeks to Minnesota. Rob, is it closing time?
No, it's the middle of the night. It's the middle of the night. I wrote down some answers here, so I guess I can read them now since I closed the screenshot because it won't show you the answer. So your options are wait another 15 or 20 minutes and see if she returns. And it's supposed to say, and then leave and call her the next morning if she doesn't call you first. But it didn't take all the text. Should you immediately notify the club security and give them her description and call 911? Should you search the club on your own, including staff areas, before involving other people? Assuming she left with somebody, this is your last option. Assuming she left for somebody, with somebody, call her mom if she doesn't call you by tomorrow afternoon. So what do you guys think? Anybody got any ideas what the best thing to do?
I feel like it's best nowadays to overreact. Yeah, Carrie says go look for her and notify security. And Marco says use the buddy system. Man, we always used the buddy system. Like,
see, after talking to TJ yesterday, using the buddy system might not work because they could drug both of you.
Yeah, and I don't want to victim blame you guys, but don't leave your friends. You know what I mean?
Hey, Zawoki, thank you.
He came over here. I sent him the link to the chat because you guys, I need a training on Streamlabs. So I gave them the link to your
StreamYard. Yeah.
StreamYard.
StreamYard,
But
I guess it looks different from my perspective than what you see.
because if
there's
you go look at mine, it's all tiny and it looks stupid. But I need a training. But I feel like, yeah, nowadays, like, oh God, call 911. Like, we've got to overreact, right? And I feel bad that, like, to say this, but like Natalie's friends left her. Well, Natalie left, but they didn't go check up on her. And then Kanaki's friends let her go off with Josh Reeby to the beach. But like, how different would all of this be if they would have all stuck together? We would know everything that happened.
But yeah, the correct, well, should I tell you guys? I'll let you guess.
Yes.
I'm just going to let you guess, because then you got to click on it, and then I know that people are clicking on these things. That one, actually, I don't know what happened, but it didn't allow me to write the entire sentence out for some reason. There must be a character cap or something that I didn't pay attention to.
Check down here in 5 minutes. While we are letting people answer that, are you still letting people answer it?
Yeah, there. I mean, I can check in a minute and see if anybody
this
on it.
Immediately, another thought, colder and sharper.
Oh, I was like,
oh yeah. See, this is what you guys will start finding more and more in my members only thing. This isn't even a video yet.
There's no other way, Chris.
It
In
doesn't
his
have
mind, a terrible resolve has crystallized, and it comes in with eerie calm.
If you guys like
Late that
weird
night,
stuff like
after the
this,
girls are asleep, Chris
you'll enjoy
slips
it.
into the basement or a quiet corner to call Nicole one more time. They did in 11 minutes. His voice is soft, filled with affection and future plans. An apartment he might rent, places he might travel. He tells her he'll be going straight to the oil field in the morning, planting
you, and I will kill you. That guy was pretty awesome. Didn't he like have some bad press a couple years ago and then wasn't allowed to make movies?
Yeah.
I really liked the guy. I thought he was a good guy. I didn't care if he was, did something wrong. He could always be forgiven and make more movies.
But what I was going to say while you guys were kind of answering that, did anyone like run over to Daily Mail's website after seeing the News Nation thing, thinking like, oh, I want to see the letters themselves? So I did, because I was like, these oddly sound like the same ones that are in Dylan's book, like the word Jezebel, that's a Bible term or whatever. So, I run over to Daily Mail. They don't even have a new article out. So that just shows you it is not a new story. And I was really bummed. I was texting up a storm to Rob being like, I'm so mad because I hate when media does that, because it gives journalists a bad rap that like they're just putting stories out there when there's no new update. But I think the interview with the guy from Daily Mail was new, but those letters were not new. And that was 10 minutes that they could have talked about Kanaki being missing on Friday.
Yeah,
so I think that's why
that really surprised me. That it really surprised me that they did such an old story like that, and they presented it like it was new. So I don't know if somebody just didn't know what they were giving them to read or what, but they usually keep up with like current events, I think.
Yeah.
I actually watch them fairly often.
Yeah, I love News Nation. My former coworker Henna Dobe, if you've seen her on there, she's got like the long dark curly hair. I worked with her here in Atlanta, and I texted her yesterday and I said, I'm not trying to be like, nitpicky. I go, but why did you guys run this story? I'm like, because I wanted to see the letters, right? Like, are they new? And you notice on Daily Mail, they didn't even post a new story. So I think that some days when it's a slow news day, we used to just kind of go back and look at old stories and um, retell them or try to get a new perspective or a new angle. But there's so much going on and so many missing people that we could have taken 10 minutes to talk about that instead. I don't know. That's just kind of how I felt Friday when I saw that.
Yeah, I have noticed that people are watching the story we did yesterday, and I think I think I don't know if people are going to start watching it again and trying to find out more information now. But TJ was right. That girl's body needs to be found. Something needs to be proven that she's either disappeared or she actually was taken. And if she was taken, there's a chance they could find her. There
Yeah,
is
I
a
really
lot of
think the
things.
human trafficking is like where it's at. And Rob, I didn't even message you today, but I was thinking of reaching out to Josh. He might not answer, or his family, and just see if they would talk to TJ.
Yeah,
Because I'm
that would.
always like, if you have nothing to hide, because we always talk about Kessinger, if you have nothing to hide, why not come forward so that then we can start looking in the human trafficking angle and stop putting our eyes on you.
Mhm.
Maybe he would talk to TJ. I don't know, but I thought about reaching out to him.
Yeah, I thought that was a good idea. Whoever brought that up yesterday, that was like, the kid actually seems maybe like he is legitimately innocent in
Yeah.
this. Um, but if he actually is, I mean, he could easily clear his name. Today, somebody was talking to me about how they thought that the friends were somehow in on her disappearance. I don't really believe that.
Yeah.
It just seems kind of far fetched. If they go on vacation together, they're not going to like sell their friend. Somebody else mentioned that Josh, what was his last name?
Reby.
Reby, received $60,000. I asked them the morning that the girl disappeared, or they found out she disappeared, but I asked, where's the? I want to see where you got that information, because
Yeah. Where's the
that
60K?
changes a lot
And
of things if something like that were true.
I'm
Um,
sure they checked his bank account statements and things like that just to kind of cover where he was, what he was doing, and we would see a deposit for 60,000. I'm sure they searched his room, right, for evidence. They would have
yeah,
found 60 in
I think
cash.
they checked him out. He was probably okay. Somebody else mentioned that in that video where you could see him throwing up in the
Yeah.
background, there's two guys sitting at the end of the bar there, and one of them smells his drink and puts it down, and nobody's drinking anything.
Yeah.
And they're like, maybe these guys are like getting drinks from the bartender that are preset with drugs in them to, because that's what happened in the Natalie Holloway case. The bartender was in on it. The bartender gave the drink to the guy. The guy didn't pour the drugs in and give it to the girl. What was his name?
Vandersloot. Yeah.
Vandersloot.
You're on.
Yeah, urine. I just said urine. Urine. How do you say his name?
You're on. You're on.
Yeah, I'm not
Very
going to try.
powerful family too. Yeah, I mean, that's what I was telling TJ about. And here, you guys locally in Atlanta, like, we watch all these movies and stuff, but like, human trafficking is a real thing. And one thing, I'm old now, I'm not going out to the bar anymore, but women are now getting involved too, where they're like, Olga, you and I might go to the bar one night, and like a girl starts coming up and talking to us, and we're thinking like, oh, it's harmless, it's another girl, but she could be drugging our drink, getting information about us, because she's helping people. Like, when they say trafficking ring, it's like a ring of people sharing information, and their goal is to find the victim, right, and kidnap them and trap them. And it's really scary to think you could think you're talking to a harmless person at the bar, and they could be involved in this business.
Yeah, I mean, we think of this, and you think of human trafficking, and you think of adults, but it also happens for
Yeah.
kids. And I think you and I were talking about this one time when my son like disappeared at this children's museum, and he was like
Yes,
in
and
another
the
room
woman.
with the kid, and that kid could have been like, coaxing him to leave with his,
Tell the
person.
story, Rob, because I think it is important because this really happens.
Well, I don't remember where I saw it at, but I had watched something on TV and they talked about how other kids will help these adults kidnap other kids. And the way they do it is like somebody will befriend your child, and then, it's out of the boundary. They already know that, but your kid wants to be friends with somebody, and they go. Once they go, into that other room, or, across the street, or wherever, behind the bathroom, they get taken. And I've
Yeah.
seen it portrayed in a couple of TV shows also. And it kind of reinforced that idea that, it's not always, some stranger who's trying to find a lost dog in the park. Sometimes it's, somebody else that you wouldn't suspect. I think they've gotten a lot smarter. When I was a kid, they always said stranger danger, and now that I'm an adult, they say that's not a good thing to teach your kids, because
Yeah,
they'll
they
be
do
looking
say.
for the scary stranger when they should be worried about the scary uncle or something.
Yeah.
Your friends' parents, or somebody who they wouldn't think to suspect. It's sometimes like in if you watch what is that crime show, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, most of those people who hurt the children and stuff are people that know the family. So you got to be very careful. Um, and if anything ever feels off slightly, you need to talk about it. Otherwise, you don't know what can happen, and nobody wants to find out 30 years later that you could have prevented something that happened to somebody.
Yeah. And it's such a great example to like a female or another child, because like you think about it when you're at the park with your kid and you might be on your phone and you look up, every so often, or you're like a helicopter parent and you're watching the whole time. But if it's another kid approaching your child, you're probably just going to go, oh, it's fine. But exactly like
Well,
you're
yeah,
saying,
I'm such a helicopter parent that I
right,
actually like
watch it.
immediately got suspicious when this other kid's like, taking my friend or taking my son like further away than he's supposed to go, doing things
Yeah.
he's been told he shouldn't do. But I know helicopter parent is a bad term, but I
Well,
was
these days
always,
it's not the 80s anymore, man. You can't like that's a quote from Bluey.
well, I
Um
think when they're little, they don't need the independence that they need when they're in their, you know, 12 to like
teens. Yeah.
15, when you actually grow up. So I don't think it's necessarily bad, but at some point you got to stop, um, you know, fixing everything for them so they can learn to do it themselves and become good adults.
It's hard. It's hard.
So I'm gonna check and see if anybody has voted to see if
Yeah, I was gonna
who's
ask you
got
if
the
you can
answer for. Except I can't find it.
I wanted to mention while you're looking for that. So the punishment, going back to our watch topic, that's what I love about our channel. Sometimes we go off on a tangent, but we're talking about important cases. The punishment for the incident where Tallman was caught with Watts's items that he was given, they both received infractions, which I actually requested the report on that. And they were not allowed to purchase canteen for a while. So that means like, no snackies for Chris. And
Yeah.
I believe no phone calls for a while.
Well, I think he really likes his snacks nowadays, right?
Yeah.
From what I've seen of his pictures, he's gained a lot of weight.
Yeah. And
Since
he lost phone call. Well, they both lost phone call privileges.
you guys got to remember this happened, I think, in 2019, so it's a long
Yes.
time ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know how
2020.
we should like see if we could find out like what his history is like. Like, was that the only time he got in trouble for anything while he was there?
It is, because I mean, I requested from, when did he get there? 2019. I've requested from 2019 to 2025. I did like February, because the bigger chunk of a time you request, the longer it takes them to get these reports. And the thing is, they can take their time. Like, that's what's frustrating. Yes, they do need to fill the request. However, they can take their time as long as they want to fill it. But I'm glad I finally figured out why I wasn't getting the phone calls, because I was like, what is the deal? Like, but that makes sense that they're not. You're right. It was Chris's boxers. That is weird. Because at first I thought maybe he just bought him new pair of boxers, but no, it does say they were.
They've got to have his name on it if like they were found there and they could be identified as Chris's.
Yeah.
Because I mean, everyone wears the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So
and he
it must
also
have
gave
its
him a
name.
toothbrush, petroleum jelly, soap, shampoo, coffee. So he gave him a bunch of things. But yeah, the underwear is weird. Maybe they made an agreement with each other that like Dylan was going to sell them online or something, and then they were going to split the money.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I could see it. I mean, you're in prison, you got nothing to do except for like scheme.
Plotting. Yeah.
Like that's it. All you can do is like, well, I'm gonna write a book, and I guess if you're in prison for life, you can probably get a book published easier than somebody's who's only in for like a couple days, couple months, maybe a year or two even.
Yeah. And then the interesting thing in Sherilyn Cadle's book too is Chris said he remembers getting a pamphlet when he arrived, and it was like prison rules. And one of the rules that was, he said, made him really think was he is not allowed to go to a funeral ever again. They might allow him to watch a recorded video of a funeral, but he will never be able to do that. And then it has kind of like the rundown of the rules. You're not allowed to give other inmate property to anyone at any given time. So he knew he was breaking the rules. He thought it was worth it.
So if anyone answered the question for my trivia today, and only 2 people did, and I think it's because the answers aren't all there. It looks weird, but the 2 people who did vote got the answer correct. If you voted, you know who you are.
If you voted, you know who you are. And they're talking about Bella being very intuitive. I believe the same thing. There's an interview with the Lindstrom family. The Lindstrom family is the family, McKenna, the babysitter. You remember the girls had a babysitter that night. The police interviewed them, obviously, because they were trying to get, as much details as they can. McKenna said to the police that Bella said something very weird that Saturday and said, I don't want my sister to die. And McKenna said to her, why would you say that? And then Bella didn't really respond, but that is really bizarre if you think about it, just out of, she said that.
If that is real, that is.
It is. Go watch the interview.
Yeah, but
I don't think she's lying to police.
She could be, I think there was people writing or talking to the police, telling them that they were like intimate with Chris Watts, and like there was a guy and a couple girls, and Chris Watts didn't know who they were.
No, this is the babysitter though, the family babysitter, McKenna.
Yeah.
because they're asking her, like, was anything unusual, was there anything out of the normal? And she said, well, Bella did say this, and she said she thought it was really weird. And obviously she was very concerned, like, when is my mom coming back home? Even though she knew her mom was coming back home Sunday, it was like she was really eager to get back to her mom.
Yeah. I'll have to watch that, but people lie. I think, like, even people with good intentions lie sometimes when they don't even realize they're lying. Like, I don't know, like, maybe something was brought up about that, but it might not have been the right context. The way she said it makes it sound like she was predicting her own death, and it sounds weird to me.
I don't know. I think the kid had a sixth sense, but I know you're a skeptic, Rob.
Yeah.
I'm more open to that. I know Olga is more open to that, like I am. Especially, like, even Chris said in his own words that when they were at the beach, Bella didn't want anything to do with him. She was very distant.
That video from the other day with that little girl, oh my God, it's been like, I can't stop thinking about it. It's so creepy.
Which one?
Was about to
The
leave her
graveyard
mother's
one?
grave, she began waving and saying goodbye.
Bye, kids. Bye-bye.
Her aunt was confused they were the only two people at the cemetery. She steps up onto her mom's grave before leaning her head up for a kiss.
Gotta be movie man.
She points and says goodbye one last time before going on as if nothing strange just happened.
Where are you waving
She
at, like?
sees her mama.
This little girl was
That is just, I don't know. Well, I don't believe it's real. I think it's movie magic. It looks
You're
real,
skeptic, Rob.
but I watch a lot of movies too. So I mean, those all look real, and if they can do it, anybody can do it if they got the right tools.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just get a
But the
feeling.
idea of it, like, terrifies me kind of. If it were real, like, it's scary.
Rob, you have orbs hanging out around your kid.
Those are little dust things floating in the air.
No, they're
That is,
protective.
like, my phone
family
camera
member.
is better than my own eyes because I can't see them, but my camera can.
Marco says it's AI. Okay, it could be, but I want to believe that she sees her mom. Mirabelle says, I think kids can sense energy. I 100% believe that. Well, Rob, what is your thoughts on that? Do you think that kids can sense energy better
I think
than
some
adults?
kids, know how to be creepy, sure, but I don't think it's, I don't think it's real. I don't think so. If they're doing anything, they're just making assumptions that adults wouldn't make, and they're picking up on things that are happening, in reality, not spirits and stuff, but that they just kind of guess things. They're making those intuitive leaps that adults can't make, perhaps.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that kid walking over the grave and puckering up to the air is terrifying if it was real. But it can't. I mean, it has to be movie magic.
Riding down the rabbit holes on my channel, and she's saying, once you see it, Rob, in real life, you would change your mind.
I don't know. When my grandpa passed, my dad swore that he saw his spirit, blah blah blah. I didn't believe it then. I won't believe it now.
What do you guys think about Chris Watts saying in Sherilyn Kettle's book that Cece would dance in his cell, and he claims that the papers would float in the air like she was spinning around, doing like ballet dancing, and then he screamed at her and was like, watch out, which, why would you do that? I don't know. But what do you think about that? You think he's just imagining in his head that he saw that?
It's probably some sort of schizophrenia. He's got an imaginary friend, and he doesn't realize that he's dancing in the cell himself, making the air move and moving those papers.
Could be.
What was that movie? A Beautiful Mind or something like that, where the guy's got his good friend his whole show, and you find out at the end that he's a
Sixth
figment
Sense?
of his imagination. No.
No,
It's
something different.
Russell
Okay.
Crowe. Russell Crowe, I think.
I
was in
haven't
it.
seen that movie, but I heard it's really good.
Oh, that movie gave me nightmares for years because that could happen. You know, you see a ghost and then all of a sudden you find out that you're really just hallucinating.
Yeah, that would be. Well, then maybe he needs a psych eval, which he keeps refusing to do one.
I don't blame him.
I would really like to know. I would like Chris to be tested to see if he's on the autism spectrum, and I think that's like the only reason I would write him is I want to know if he thinks he is now, because that was now put in his head. And you all know how I feel about using that as a defense with like the Kohlberger case. It makes me angry because then people are going to connect those two things together. What do you guys think? I mean, people with high IQs can be on the spectrum. So yes, he has a high IQ, so that doesn't mean he can't be on the spectrum. But what do you guys think about that?
I don't think he is. I think he's fairly normal. He probably has some kind of disorder, but everyone technically does. They
Yeah.
don't necessarily need medication for it, but
He
if
seems
you
like
go
he's
to a
got like
doctor and
social
tell them,
anxiety.
"Hey, what's wrong with me?" they're going to find an answer and they're going to give you medication for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Molly said that, you know, the babysitter said that she was confused and she probably meant peanuts. See, that's the context I'm talking about. We don't know why
Yeah, I
she
get
said
what you're
that.
saying.
If it was the Nutgate, you know, talking, you know, she's worried that her sister's going to die eating peanuts, then it makes more sense that she said it, other than, you know, just saying
Out
it
of nowhere. Yeah. Carrie says, isn't EM on the spectrum? Who's EM? Ed? Who's EM?
I don't know who EM is either.
Oh, Elon Musk. Yes, he is. I wish he would do more advocating, honestly. I don't even want to get into politics, but
See, I don't know if Elon Musk doesn't really seem like he's on the spectrum to me. But then again, you know, he could
he
be on
openly is,
the
though.
good end, which is fine. I mean, I think they just have issues making eye contact at one end, and then the other end they could be, you know, afraid of touch, and you know, all kinds of other little things that are just hard for people to deal with.
But I mean,
Anybody?
like that, now they're
Panic.
making the spectrum more broad, where like, I think he, you know, he definitely, because he went on Saturday Night Live and said he was the first host to ever, you know, be, and he's using the word Asperger's syndrome, which is not a real thing anymore. They don't use that term because it's kind of acting like my condition is better than yours kind of thing. But it wasn't true, because Dan Aykroyd actually is on the spectrum.
Yeah, I couldn't see that for him. But I mean, at that end of the spectrum, it really doesn't make you, you know, you learn to deal with it. Just have, I don't know. I had a friend of mine whose dad was like a head of a logistics kind of trucking place, you know, real smart, wealthy guy. But he was a little odd, but he was on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And he would tell people about it, you know, don't mind me.
Well, I didn't know that that Asperger's syndrome is not well received. You know, like I'm learning every day new things. So like when my son got evaluated, I was like trying to say he must be high functioning, but I'm suspicious that he, you know, is on the spectrum, and that's why we're here today. And then my husband later told me, he's like, yeah, they don't use that term anymore. And I was like, I didn't know, you know, like learning something every day.
Yeah. You should always I think it's a good idea to get a second opinion before you know, if you're suspicious already and you go to a doctor and you ask them about anything, they're going to try to look for it and see if it is there. But if you take, I mean, I don't know, it's probably worth checking, you know, with other doctors.
He's had second opinions, and he is. And I don't, it's not anything I'm trying to get him treated for or anything like that. It, you know, it's just, I think it's more widely accepted now, and people are learning to just adapt to people who think differently or speak differently or feel differently. But I'm getting mad that they're now bringing this into the court system as a defense mechanism to get out of murder.
I think they do that with all kinds of things, any kind of disorder. They bring it up as a way to, lessen the charges or the sentence some way. But I think in the end, it isn't going to make much difference.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to.
Chris
People
is
who
just
are autistic
socially
are
awkward.
very different from each other. They really are. So I don't think it's really going to give autism a stigma.
Well, I hope not. But it really rubbed me the wrong way. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way that Sherilyn even brought it up to him, because he's probably now like, yeah, I should get looked at,
Well, guys, I'm going to have to get out of here. It's already 5:30. But I was happy to have you all here. And if you didn't get to watch the whole thing, please go back and check it out. You can also watch this on Crafted Evidence podcast, if you want. And I know some of you are gifted some memberships. So make sure you thank Zawoki for those and check out the members only community section. There's a couple things there. And I'll be posting some other things in the next couple days too, just for my members.
Yeah. Also, just want to give a shout out again to Alex Erickson. We played some clips from her channel, so if you want to watch the full interview with Dylan Tallman, go over to her page. I'll pin it in my comments section.
All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before we?
No, I don't think so. Let us know, you guys. You want us to continue Watson it away? I mean, obviously, we don't want to make videos just to make them. We want to bring new information out there. But right now, please, shoot us an email or put something in the chat. Rabbit said, "What am I painting?" I'm painting coasters. So. But yeah, keep us posted and look out for those videos that Rob said he's going to post later this week. They're going to be good.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, have a good night. I'll catch you in the next video.